Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining from today. Thanks for joining our special live stream today where we're doing this at a non-traditional time. We usually do these on Tuesday mornings, but we decided to do a sort of a midweek, midday sort of live stream here today. So thanks for being here. Our topic today is digital transformation in sports and entertainment, which is something that's super exciting because we've never discussed it on the podcast. And like many of you watching, hopefully you love sports and entertainment as much as I do. So it's going to be fascinating to tie two of my loves together here, which is technology and sports and entertainment. So it'll be cool to exactly. Yeah. And I'll introduce our guest here in just a moment that's joining me from the world of digital transformation and sports and entertainment, who knows a lot more about sports and entertainment than I do. But before we jump in, a couple logistical things. First of all, we are recording this live, obviously. So any questions you have, please drop questions in the chat. So we've opened up the chat here. We can see everything that's being discussed in the various platforms we're streaming to, which includes LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So be sure to drop any questions you have in the chat along the way here. Secondly, we're going to use this podcast as part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast. So you're part of the live production of that podcast. We'll edit this. We'll add some stuff to it. And you'll see this in a few weeks come out as a formal episode of Transformation Ground Control. And then last but not least, I'd love to hear where the audience is joining from today. So if you don't mind just dropping in the chat what city and country you're joining from today. I imagine we're probably going to have, hopefully we have some people from the U.S. here, not because we don't want people from other countries, but because we're going to talk about American sports to some degree here, I imagine, because my guest and I are both here in the U.S. But regardless of where you are today, I'd love to hear from you. And also this topic will be relevant wherever in the world you are here today. So again, the topic here today is digital transformation in sports and entertainment. And joining me today is the CEO of a company called Evolving Tech, Torsha Perry. So Torsha, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Hey, guys.
Glad to have you here, and first time guest here, and excited to have this conversation with you. And we crossed paths on, I think it was Instagram.
Yeah, I think it was Instagram.
And you were posting stuff about technology, and I saw some stuff about technology, but then I saw you posting stuff about sports and entertainment. And then I realized,
what does she do?
She's all over the place. But then I realized, she does technology in sports and entertainment.
Sports and entertainment, yeah.
So that's how we got in touch, and have been in touch for, I think, a few months now, maybe a little bit longer. But this is the first time we've had a chance to meet and do this interview. So thanks for being here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Evolving Tech, if you don't mind. Just start out.
Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. I am CEO, as Eric mentioned, of a company called Evolving Tech, and our specialty is technology in the sports and entertainment space. And that is so broad. It's not just football. I know I'm usually all about the Falcons, but my company consults with them to do project management in the area of our IT. We manage the book of business in Arthur M. Blank Sports and Entertainment. We just manage that book of business from a portfolio management perspective. So projects can range from, something with Atlanta United, not just American football, or events like a Taylor Swift concert that's being held at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, or looking at data analytics to look at fan experiences and engagement, sports performance as well. We know training camp is coming up. There's a lot of tools that can be used for that as well. So the portfolio can be all over the spectrum.
Yeah, very cool. It's a nice little niche, and I've never actually met anyone that's in that niche. So it's cool. I'm excited to dig into this and learn more about what you do and sort of what your experience has been, and also how. What I'm really excited to get into is how digital transformations are similar in sports and entertainment as they might be in, say, a manufacturing company, but also how they're different from the unique nuances of it. So I'm excited to get into that here in just a second. Yeah. But before I do that, though, I've got I'm going to try something a little bit different here because I'm such a football fan, and I know you are too, Torsha, and hopefully some watching here today are sports fans. But so I've got a book here, and I've got several copies of this book, but I'm going to give away a couple copies here with a trivia question. I'm going to sign this and send it to whoever can get this question right first that's watching us live here today. And it's Atlanta Falcon related trivia because Torsha does work with the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL. And since you're not in the same room with us, if you don't know who the Atlanta Falcons are, you are allowed to Google it because I'm not going to know either way. But the first question is that I'm going to ask the audience here is, can you tell me who the big name quarterback is that the Atlanta Falcons just signed this offseason to be? I don't know if he'll be I assume he'll be the starting quarterback next year, but they drafted someone else. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But just drop in the chat, the big name quarterback the Atlanta Falcons just landed a few months ago, which I imagine you Atlanta Falcons fans are pretty excited about. I would be if I were a Falcons fan.
Yeah.
So anyway, drop in the chat while we're getting started here. I'd love to hear any responses you might have, any guesses as to who that quarterback is.
And any trivia about NASCAR as well. I've done Evolving Tech's done some work with NASCAR as well, just some special projects individually, and I support them fully. The huge thing right now for me is women in sports, and I want to get that message out there. And you don't have to be the owner of the team, that would be great, but there's a lot of areas that there are a lot of great women that I know that are doing great things in sports and entertainment.
Yeah, very cool. Well, speaking of women in sports and entertainment, let's start with you and then find out what tell us about some of the work you do. I know you just described a little bit in the introduction of Evolving Tech and what you do, but maybe tell us a little bit about, what is that, the type of work you're doing. Could you maybe expand or elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. So from a portfolio and project management perspective, it really needs to stay fluid. So for example, if we've got an event that is coming up, the technology team that does all of our, technology work, or if it has to do with transforming something in that arena, like doing data analytics, fan engagement, as I mentioned earlier, sports performance, any of that. So what I do is I help the team move forward on those projects as far as documentation, as far as putting all the pieces together from each organization, helping them drive that to, the definition of a project has a start and finish date. And sometimes the start and finish date is like this, and sometimes it's like that. We have projects, we have to just remain very fluid a lot, because being rigid in this industry sometimes doesn't work, because there are things that the NFL mandates, there's things that owners mandate, there are things that we try to do to make it a better workplace. And I can tell you, out of all of my consulting opportunities that I've had, this is probably one of the best organizations that I've ever supported. So in making sure the team understands ServiceNow, they know how to go in the tool to update their projects. We do reporting and metrics to say, hey, we've got X number of projects in the queue. Some may be, of course, higher priority than others. Some may be mandated projects that we have to do from an auditing perspective. So when you look at the broader spectrum of things, for my role, it's just ensuring that the technology team has all the tools that they need to get from start to finish. And again, I mentioned, that system of record that we use is ServiceNow for all of our portfolio of projects, and that's grown. I've watched it grow. It's been an awesome tool to use. Not trying to plug ServiceNow, but it has been a great tool for us for right now, because it's been able to allow us to be fluid and not be too rigid. It's not perfect. We don't have a really rigid methodology or process, but it's the way the team collaborates together that we move forward. And I think that's the awesome thing for me, is that because I came from consulting firms that were very, 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 very rigid, and having Evolving Tech come in and support them, and it's a lively environment. They're supportive of each other. I'm also, from a vendor perspective, on the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is where we have our events here in Atlanta, for the Falcons, Atlanta United, et cetera. I'm on the Diversity and Inclusion Council, and that's really fun. They really care about inclusion of everyone. This has been a rough time, and as everybody knows, it's been a rough season. And so as far as culturally and in the world, so we're trying to do a great job at just being inclusive of everyone.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so it goes well beyond the technology stuff that you're doing there, which is great. So You mentioned technology being a system of record in organizations in the sports and
Mhm.
entertainment world that you've worked with. Same could be said for manufacturers and
Right.
government entities and other types of
Mhm.
organizations. But tell us a little bit about how is technology important outside of like tracking financials and tracking you know income and financial stuff and maybe just general metrics that any other business would use technology for. How is it different in the world of sports and entertainment? Like, what are some of the nuances or differences in what you see there with technology?
The difference is what I've kind of been honing in on about, the fluidness. It's really the same. Once you learn the pattern, you're just picking it up and moving it into another industry. It just happens to be a really cool industry, sports and entertainment. But when you have, for example, I see us transforming, and when I say us, I mean the industry. I see us transforming into an interactive type relationship with the fans and helping them to have a great experience on being interactive. So we want to make sure that we've got, good content creation. Um, Not sure where we're going with the sports gambling in the future, but that's going to be another transformation platform that we need to be concerned about from a regulatory perspective and making sure that we're following all the laws. We want to keep the fans in their seats to watch the game, of course, but we also want it to be. This is my evolving text view of it. We have to keep it interactive and fun and move towards that space.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. That's great. And so, when you talk about some of these, you mentioned ServiceNow is one of the
Hmm.
systems you're working with now, and
Hmm.
you've worked with in the past. Are there other types of technologies that are different that, like that you may not see in other industries because it's so unique to sports and entertainment?
Me, but personally, with Evolving Tech, I have not. Pretty much all the tools that have been used. I mean, your Power BIs and data analytic tools. There are probably some tools, and I've been working on looking at tools that do sports performance. That's one of the things. I'm a sports mom. That's why I'm so into sports. My kids both were elite athletes and went to school on scholarships. So I am really into sports performance as well. So there are tools out there for football players where, if they're deaf and you can hear, they have ways of talking to them in the helmets. So that type of technology in space, if you can look around there, almost like a virtual reality kind of thing,
Hmm.
but it's real, but it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real technology, but the situation you're seeing through the
Situation is
technology is not real.
right, 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 right. But I'm a big proponent too of accessibility transformations as well. When I say that, I mean if there's someone who has some accessibility need, whether it's hearing, seeing, speaking, whatever, that we're able to translate that technology into something that can be communicated out to other fans and in the world of sports.
Yeah, makes total sense. Um, and so, these are kind of interesting emerging technologies that a lot of us
Hmm.
probably haven't seen or touched before. These
Right.
are a lot of these like kind of customer experience based technologies that because it sounds like maybe some of them are designed to make for a better customer experience for people that are attending events. Is
Right.
that okay?
Yeah. And so we say fan experience, but fan experience, they are our customers. They're our guests though. When they come into our venues, they're our guests. And we do have an emerging tech side of the house that handles, those platforms that are emerging, and they collect the analytics on that. And we try to make sure that we continue to get new ideas, ask associates, for new, fresh ideas so that we can be on the cutting edge and be emerging technology.
Yeah, gotcha. So in sports, and maybe not so much in entertainment, but in sports, winning and losing is a thing. Obviously, it's there's a focus on
Yeah.
preferably winning. And how does that culture of winning and performance and that sort of thing? How does it affect, or does it affect digital transformation and digital strategies and the way you use technologies in the organizations you consult to?
That's a great question. Um, we're always having to to um, in the industry, this is not team specific, but in the industry, depending on your season and how you're doing, we're always wanting to stay on that cutting edge. And just say, for example, if you're having a losing season, you want to think of things that will bring the fans back, because it's, again, this is a business, so we're in the business of you know gaining resources. So we want to make sure that we keep the fans coming back, we keep them engaged. They're a huge part of the success of the organization, even when it comes to technology partnerships that we have with other technology companies like myself or an AT&T, where we want to get fans in the experience from that perspective. Telecom companies, uh, for every phase you could think of, if you were working in manufacturing or whether you're working in logistics, it's all related, and we all kind of connect and come together, because there's probably not one company that I can think of, or one industry or one vertical that I can think of that we don't intersect with at some point. We've got to leverage their technology, because we're busy trying to leverage our own technology in the sports and entertainment space. So we partner with a lot of great companies to make sure that that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah.
What are some of the bigger challenges with adopting new technologies or rolling out new technologies within the sports and entertainment industry that you think might be different, or maybe you wouldn't see as
Mhm.
much in other industries?
I think for what the experience that we've had is that there are a lot of great tools out there. However, we deal with the same challenges of business units within organizations. They go to a conference and a sales guy says, "Oh, this is a great tool to keep all your contracts in," or something like
Right.
that, and it maybe hasn't been vetted. So we're getting a lot better with that, and trying to make sure that we have our infosec folks involved to make sure that these items are secure, because things are coming from other countries, and privacy um, there's a lot of privacy that needs to go on with a lot of the projects that we deal with from day to day, especially if there are other books of businesses that we're in. We don't want everybody having access to that data. So we're just trying to manage people's expectations, not that we don't want everybody to have their say so, and a tool that helps them do their role better. However, we want to make sure that it's safe for them and safe for everyone else and safe for our fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Makes
know,
sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So regardless of whether it's been in sports and entertainment, and first of all, let me ask you this: is your entire career been in sports and entertainment, or had you worked in other?
No, and that's the craziest thing. I have been in this space for the last 3 to 4 years, but like I said, I was a sports mom, so I've been doing sports for my kids are 23 and 27, and they both play sports in college. And so I've been in sports for a long time, but my bread and butter originally came in the telecom space. All of the baby bells. I think I've done every merger and acquisition with AT&T, from baby bells to Singular Wireless to AT&T to DirecTV. So I've done. That's where my sweet spot is as far as technology. That's where I got my techie kind of hat, if you
Right.
will. And I'll tell you, telecom for me has really it's been really good to me from a career perspective, because I learned a lot. I can tell you about I started out as a business analyst,
Mm.
and that is not what I went to school to do. I didn't, but the money was good in the early 2000s, 1999, 2000. It was really good. So I started out as a business analyst, and there was this guy. His name was Don Little Liberty. I'll never forget Don. And he would take my requirements. When we used to write "we shall." I'm dating myself now.
Right.
But he would take my requirements, and he would take a pen, and he would red line. No, you need to write this. This is not specific enough. And I would go back to my little cubicle and I would cry. Don, and he was from New York, and I'm a Southern girl, and everything he said hurt my feelings. But we
Made you
were just,
tougher.
but he taught me so much, and in during that time, and then I kind of moved into project coordinator type roles, and then project management. And then I just kind of grew from there, and then post um, post life changing things, having adult kids and all of that. I was really blessed with this opportunity to be in the sports and entertainment space, and it's been fun. I probably could be somewhere with evolving tech, making a lot more money, or but it's not for me at this phase of it. It's more about enjoying the people that you support and work with. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the cast and crew, I call them the cast and crew. They are a great bunch of folks, and I get to experience so many different things that I never thought I'd be exposed to. But looking at it from a technology perspective and doing that transformation, I think we're here on the cusp of with the gambling, possibly becoming legal, and just learning how to transform the technology with the fan experience so we keep everyone engaged, and also collecting all of those analytics so that we can come up with new emerging technology that helps us stay above the line of perfection is what we want to try to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your years of experience, both at telco companies in the past and then now in sports and entertainment, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen in digital transformations or technology deployments in general, regardless of industry?
uh, Challenges, I think, getting getting leadership that may not, you know, they may not understand why it has to change, why
Yeah.
we have to transform,
Just keep it the
because
same.
so they've been very successful, and it's kind of like that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we have to be set. That's what I love about all my Scrum Masters and the Agile methodology. It's not really something that I dive too deep in, but they really do a great job of getting that leadership, or helping leadership understand why we need to transform so that we can get to this point in whatever space you're in. So I think that has been a challenge that I've seen across the board. I don't think there's a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot of changes that happen with that. There's a lot of even even from a construction PM perspective, because you've got your brick and mortar, so to speak, with like for example, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. There's constant maintenance from a technology perspective, IPTVs, wiring that needs to happen. There's a lot that goes into this space. And that there's few people that know how to do it, but there's a lot that goes into that. So anything from your telco that happens, we're moving away from office phones and desk phones. I mean, everybody's going, with Teams or some other tool. So a lot of that infrastructure has to happen, and there's a lot of great folks that understand how to implement that from an infrastructure perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to implementations, then, I mean, what do you think are the most important aspects to be successful? When you're going through these projects now in sports and entertainment or any other industry you've worked in, I mean, what have you found to be those repeatable keys that no matter what
Mhm.
situation you're in, you need to do,
You
these two
need
or
to
three
do that.
things?
And I have to. I mentioned the analyst story, what I was telling you about the guy that redlined all of my
Don,
requirements. We
his name is
also
Don.
Don, we do an awesome job as well of getting requirements that are very clear, um, and making sure that we understand what the ask is. We
Mhm.
understand but if that truly is a need and it needs to be prioritized appropriately, we do a really good job of doing analytics work and analysis work so that we understand what the rest of the team has to do to pull that all together.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
requirements, understanding the ask and the future state that what you're trying to get
Hmm.
at, that's a
Yeah.
big one. What
Yeah. Look.
about what about from a people perspective, getting people on board? What are some of the best, what's a strategy or two that you found to be the most successful in that arena or that regard?
Getting people on board. I call it herding cats.
Right. It is like herding cats.
So I think what has worked for me personally as a single consultant, and also just having evolving tech, being the CEO of that company. I think building relationships with people, and this is mental health awareness month. So that's a great question. It's a great lead in. I think that what has been successful for me is building relationships. It's worked for me for 3 decades. I try not to say we've got to go out and eat lunch all the time, but
Right.
it's just to say that we respect each other's roles and we respect our capabilities, and you keep those relationships going
Mm,
um, in a positive manner. I think the challenge with some people sometimes, if you're going into a new organization and if everybody's got great ideas, like I'm like great ideas, but you kind of have to learn the lay of the land first, know what the current state is, and then see what works for everyone from a relationship perspective, and also just from what they do, understanding what they do. Is this going to make their job a lot easier, or is it going to complicate things, or will it impact the business? Well, if I implement this, it's going to shut everything down. I always used to tell folks, if it's going to shut the business down and we're going to lose money, then that we need to address that immediately. So
yeah.
just being sensitive to that as you're transforming or bringing new tools and systematic things on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It makes sense. And, you've covered two really important threads there with the people side of things and building the relationships and
Hmm.
getting them on board, but also the operational side of things, which is the requirements definition that you've
Hmm.
talked about. What about in the world of PMO and the program management? I know that's something you're doing now and you've done in the past. If I'm an aspiring project manager and I've been tasked to take on a big technology initiative for my company, what kind of advice would you give from a PMO chair?
I think there are two key qualities that have helped me become successful. One we just talked about is building relationships, and then the next one is always educating yourself on the latest and greatest technology. I'm a woman of a particular age. I remember coding, when coding you were doing it by hand. Now basically you don't really have to think about all of that, but just staying on top of the technology. I think you don't have to know it. I'm not a developer. I always tell people I know enough to be dangerous.
Right.
I know enough to be dangerous, so I can translate that to the developer, but I can also talk to the business and understand what their needs are and translate that back and forth. And I think those are two of the key areas that I would say if you want to be successful in any project management role, and whatever methodology you're going to use, you've got to stay on top of your craft. A lot of people ask me, should I get a certification? Should I not get a certification? I have my opinions on that.
Right.
I mean, I was the Rita Mulcahy of the world back in the day when we were getting our certifications. But I, for me, having a master's degree in strategic leadership, um, I don't focus too much on certifications unless there's something that's really needed, like from a government perspective, um, or it's a client requirement. You know,
Right. But you
yeah.
you don't feel like, from your perspective, in your opinion, having
Mhm.
that a certification per se makes you a sure success or is going to
Right.
make you more successful as
That,
the other.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
tend to share that
yeah.
same
I think
share
I
that
think
same thing.
I think experience speaks for itself. And I had a CIO years ago that used to tell me, just focus on delivering. Don't focus on the politics of everything. Don't focus on knowing too much about the technology because that's not your wheelhouse. But you need to know enough to understand for the conversation. Um, so yeah, and that just goes across all industries.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you look to some of the technologies you're seeing in the space right now, like you talked about the augmented reality, you've talked about
Mhm.
ServiceNow, you've sort of alluded to some specific types of technologies you're working with these days. What are you most excited about when you think about the technology landscape right now and the ability to improve or change businesses throughout the world? What are you most excited about?
I am most excited about the augmented reality. I think it's going to be really cool. It'll be a really cool technology to get space to get into. At the same time, we've got to not make it too cool at some events because we want the fans to have it to stay in the seats. We
Yeah.
want them to enjoy the concession. We want them to. They need what do the kids call it merch now. They don't call it
Right.
merch.
Right.
We want, we want them to be engaged and we want them to enjoy. But I'm excited to see how that's going to emerge.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like you guys are probably ahead. It would make sense that
We
sports and
are.
entertainment would be ahead of the game in terms of
We are.
augmented reality.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some companies out there that are starting to use like the metaverse and augmented reality to do business to business type stuff. But
Mhm.
but the case studies or use cases of it are so limited, because
Yeah.
it's not as obvious how you might use that
Right.
technology in most business settings, but in a highly um, consumer facing event
Hmm.
experiential type of industry like sports and entertainment, I can see how that would be a pretty big deal. All right, have
Yeah.
you guys rolled any of that out yet? Like in any of the organizations you're working with, have you actually started using it, or are you sort of just testing it now to
I,
see how
I,
it works?
I think right now we're still in the early phases of that, but it's on the roadmap. So that's why I say I see that coming down the board across the industry. We've got some robotics, that we're using. We've got a lot of innovative tools that we're using right now that I can't speak about, but we are going towards that direction.
Gotcha. So in addition to augmented reality, anything else like any other types of technologies that you're excited about that you're digging into or at least learning about right now?
I'm learning more about sports performance. I mentioned that earlier. I really want to understand the technology and analytics to where we can help sports performance trainers do their job a lot easier.
Mm.
So I'm excited about that. Um,
It-
I I think we can do that in the track and field space. We can do a NASCAR already does it. I support them as well. And you'd be amazed at what happens after those guys are done, driving those cars and the analytics that they talk about. After the race or the following week to say, hey, well, his head went 3 centimeters back this time when he came around at this track. But I mean, it's very
mm,
detailed, and the cars are broken down. Um, to look at the analytics, and it's not. I know some people think they do that because they want to make sure nobody cheated or anything, but it's really just to capture the data
mm.
that the drivers and their experience. Um, I'm not there's some other socially, from an energy ESG perspective. I think that's going to be a big space and a big deal in sports and entertainment soon. It's already there. I think that more and more companies are starting to understand how important that is for the environment and sustainability.
Yeah.
That was an area I don't think we've touched on, but sustainability is one that we really value that. And looking at all of the ESGs that spaces that we have to fulfill.
Do you guys use technology to track that stuff now, or are you going to track in the future as far as like, the footprint, the carbon footprint, or kind of the
Hmm.
impact you have on the environment at these different events? Because if you think about it, these big, massive events where you get 70, 80,000 people together, I mean, that's a recipe for environmental impact, right? So,
Right, right.
so
Yeah,
how did,
we are very very aware of it. I haven't worked on any specific projects in that space for in the sports and entertainment space, but I am actively involved in sustainability in some other areas. And I brought up NASCAR because that triggered the sustainability
Yeah.
in talking about, maybe one day we move towards hydrogen and we get technology, that relates to hydrogen cars versus,
The
oil and
diesel.
gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes
Or
sense. And
or even electric, because it's not gonna get you around the track like hydrogen.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think too, a lot of organizations, because here in the US, ESG it doesn't have the same traction or the same
Yeah.
importance yet as it does like in Europe.
Mhm.
And in Europe, they're already regulating it. They have already got requirements that I think are going into effect next year in 2025, where companies over a certain size, which would include, most of these big sports and entertainment companies that
Mhm.
you've worked for, if
Yep.
they're over a certain size, they have to be tracking and reporting what
Mhm.
their environmental impact is. And so they
Right.
need systems to be doing that. So it's good you guys are thinking about that, because I think it's only a matter of time before, like it or not, US is going to probably have some regulations
Right.
like that. They'll probably
Right.
follow. I imagine they'll
Yeah.
follow the EU's lead on that. But that's interesting. You guys are thinking about, especially. I hadn't thought about the NASCAR thing too. Like, you not only do you have tens of thousands of people in one place, not destroying the environment, but impacting the environment, and then you get cars that are using up all this
Mhm.
fuel, and so I
Right.
can see how that, it might be a target for, let's make sure we can track that stuff and show improvements and all that good stuff.
Right. So we have at Mercedes-Benz Stadium there's we recycle, we try to do as much as we can in that space. And there's I'm sure there's a whole bunch of really smart people that know all about ESGs. I just went to a conference a few weeks ago with another business or another partner, and it's amazing how much information is out there. I don't think people really understand how important reducing your carbon footprint is, but it's true. It truly does impact the environment. And I'm glad you said it that way, because I don't want people to look at it as we're hurting the environment, but it is impacting the environment. So we just need to change a few things
Mhm.
that really aren't that big of a deal. It's just being aware of our carbon footprint
Yeah.
and putting
Yeah.
back into, again, the ESGs.
Have you been to Ball Arena in Denver by chance?
Mm-mm.
So at where the Denver Nuggets play here, who are in the playoffs right now, go Nuggets. But when you when you go to the Ball Arena, which is owned by or sponsored by Ball Aerospace, they make
Mhm.
aluminum, and so all the cups, anything you use there is recyclable aluminum. So they've made a huge push at Ball
Mhm.
Arena. Partly,
Mhm.
I think some of it is self serving for Ball, because they're producing all the aluminum that gets used at the arena, but they also recycle it all. And they've got people like standing out front where they collect
Mhm.
the
The
cups
collect.
from you
Yep.
and recycle it, on
Mhm.
your way out. So I see, I can see how big sports players are, like yourselves, and even here in Denver, throughout the world, how they're making a push into ESG
Mhm.
for sure.
For
So that'll be
sure.
interesting to see how technology, affects that, or
Yeah,
might
and
already in the future.
I really want to see how we pattern what the pattern that the European pattern right now, and how the states either mimic that, or there's some tweaks that we have to make here and there here in the states. But I think we've got a good model from Europe.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no
Hmm.
point in recreating
Yeah,
it
look,
how bad
yes,
it's
as I call it, rinse and repeat.
right. Yeah. Yep. We have so at Third Stage, our consulting company, we use a business process management tool that we license from another company that's European based. And
Hmm.
in that tool, they've sort of built an ESG capability where, as you're
Oh,
mapping business requirements and as you're documenting, or as you're mapping business processes and you're documenting the requirements behind it, you can also use it as a way to start to capture information about ESG and what the impact is, and what your new processes might
yeah.
affect those metrics. So it's kind of interesting, and again, they're in Europe, so they have to do it to
Mhm.
satisfy their local,
Right.
customers that are regulated now by the EU on that. So there are
Yep.
tools that are emerging, especially out of Europe, that I think are going to be ahead of the game, that we
Mhm.
might be able to look to use that here in the US,
And
not just in sports and entertainment, but other areas as well.
other areas as well. Yeah. When I went to that conference in Phoenix couple of months ago, I think I saw every industry out there. I mean, everything from like a LinkedIn to a Walmart to a ServiceNow. I mean, there were so many areas that this impacts. It's just like every area could use, every area could leverage having what you just said and having that tool to integrate the metrics to figuring out, your ESG.
Yeah.
Um, from a social, aspect, all of it.
Yeah. I want to come back to something I forgot to ask you earlier. You were talking about when you're talking about performance based technologies, like what
Mhm.
trainers are using and how you're using some newer
Mhm.
technologies around that. Are you also, you personally, do you get involved with or have you been involved with technologies like the Moneyball types of technologies where, for those that aren't familiar, the Moneyball is a book and a movie that stars Brad Pitt, and it's about a guy that gets into analytics and using analytics to recruit or to scout players or
Players.
potential players for the team. Have you gotten involved in any of that stuff, that side of technology and analytics yet, or has that been within your scope?
No, it hasn't been in my scope of work, and that's actually a great area. I mean, even with if, as a newer generation comes on board, I think that's a great area for. I'm all about women, female sports, and women in sports and entertainment, and that's an awesome area for I think females to start getting involved in. It's still kind of from my perspective and from an evolving text perspective, it's more of the guys are still kind of doing that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think that's a wonderful question. I didn't even think about that, but that's a wonderful question. Have not been involved in it, but I see that as no pun intended, an evolving area for women to get involved in sports and entertainment as well. And that's what excites me is that yeah, you can be a coach, you can be an athlete, and I am just so cheering female sports right now. But there's so many other areas that women currently are making an impact. I mean, me personally, I know a lot of women in sports and entertainment that are doing a wonderful job, and I see that getting even better. So I want to encourage, females to start, looking in that area. Just you have to have some other back. If you're an athlete, we used to always tell the guys, have a backup plan, have a backup plan. And this could
Yeah.
be a backup plan for some of the young ladies that are currently athletes. I know a person like my daughter, she's probably one of the best left-handed shot put throwers in the country, but
Wow.
she's going into medicine, and she's probably going to either go into something with oncology and sports and or sports therapy. I know my son, being a sports performance trainer, he's going in that same space. But I love seeing the females. I mean, she's not gonna go. My daughter's not gonna go into being a professional shot put player, but
Right.
she was able to pivot that talent into something else like sports medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool. My son
Mhm.
wants to do. My older son wants to do sports management, so that's what he's hoping to go to school
Mhm.
for. And
Yeah.
he's actually excited to watch this interview, which he
Yeah.
never watches any of my interviews, but this one he wants to watch
Yeah.
because you're on here today to talk about this topic. So
That was one of the areas that I kind of want. I wanted to be what was that? Jerry Maguire.
yeah,
Show me the money.
yeah.
I
You
wanted
wanted
to
to be
be
an agent?
Jerry. I wanted to be an agent, and I know some great agents as well. But I didn't go in that area. I've been looking at folks who are following that path, that career path. I mean, some folks will tell you you have to get a law degree. That's the only way you can be a sports agent. And some folks will tell you you don't. But that's something that they would need to research, and like you said, getting the education in sports management and affiliating yourselves with that, with organizations that are in that space.
Yeah. It makes you were talking about women in this space.
Mhm.
Agent is another, as I know you're saying, you kind of toyed with that idea, but it actually, as you
Mhm.
said, I was like, that's a good idea. A woman agent, I feel like, not to stereotype, but they might be better negotiators than men because
They are. We
less
are.
ego, more finesse, that sort of thing.
We are. And I can't remember the player right now. I've got brain fog from being sick, guys. But he has, an all female cast, I think, on his team. So, women are awesome. I mean, that you already know that women are awesome. But
Yeah,
I
and
think
I'm married to
that,
one, so
yeah, you're married to one, so you know. But I think going into that space that hasn't been traditionally maybe as embracive to women. I think now it's just very exciting to see women being embraced in that area, and accolades are going out to them for being very successful and doing such an awesome job in that space, not just from the athlete's perspective. I mean, we got to have our athletes, we know that, but there's so many things that happen behind the scenes, such as what Evolving Tech does, that
yeah,
you know a lot of folks aren't aware of.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes total sense. So just as sort of a capstone or a wrap up of all the stuff we've talked about so far,
Mhm.
what advice would you have for teams or individuals that are on a project team that are going through digital transformations or just getting started on some sort of technology journey? What are the most important first steps that you or pieces of advice you'd give to them?
I would say make sure you understand the current state. Just understand the current state, and then start building those blocks. I'm breaking it down for folks who are listening to this that may not know the terminology in the industry. But you learn that current state, and then you move into your future state. I think sometimes we get too bogged down into this emerging tech, and we just want to implement things. And I know I'm the person that wants to fail fast. If I'm gonna fail, I'm fail fast and keep it moving. But I think we do need to take some time to groom and understand the current state, so that we can move to the emerging tech side and the digital transformation side.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's key.
yeah. Fail fast. So taking more of that agile
Yeah,
approach. Don't overthink it. Don't.
don't
I mean,
overthink
you
it.
do want to plan, but you don't want to plan
But
for
yeah,
years and years.
yeah, and trust me, I'll be planning something forever if I was allowed to. So I have to really manage that. But to me, in my experiences, understanding that current state and understanding it quickly, it has been more successful than over planning something.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Well, that's sound advice. How can people connect with you, learn more about you, learn more about your company? What are the best ways to stay in touch with you?
My website is evolvingtechworld.com. And then on social media, I am Evolving Tech.
Okay,
So just reach out to me on Instagram or any of the platforms, and or go to the website, send me an email, Torsha.Perry at evolvingtechworld.com.
cool. All right, sounds good.
This
Well, thanks
is
for being
fun,
here, Torsha.
Eric.
This
This
is
was
really
really
fun. Thanks for
fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and yeah, this I appreciate you being here today.
No problem. Thank you. And thank you for all that you do in the digital transformation space. I just really want to say that I haven't met you in the physical, but I've bounced so many ideas off you on tools and processes and how do you think this should be handled. And you've been just a wealth of knowledge. You're like a walking chat GPT.
Oh, nice. That might be the nicest compliment I've ever gotten. So thank you. I appreciate
one,
that.
of, one of my good friends, she calls me a walking motherboard, but you are a walking chat GPT.
What a good duo though. Motherboard, ChatGPT together. I mean,
Yeah,
you
like we can do it
conquer
all.
the
We can
world.
rule the world. So
Exactly.
yeah, I just wanted to say that before we ended the session, and say I really thank you and thank you for your contribution. I know a lot of times the IT stuff isn't the sexy part of things, um, but in the world that we work in and we maneuver in, you're awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And I appreciate you being here. I mean, it's people like you that add all this content and knowledge. And I'm just learning from you. And now when I go do another video, I'll take some nuggets that you've given me today and everyone will give me the credit. So really they should be giving you credit for some of the stuff that I'll talk about in the future. So yeah,
Uh,
thank you for being here.
this
Really appreciate it. Thanks to the audience for joining here today. And just a reminder, this podcast will get edited and polished up, and then we'll add some additional content to it, make it part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast. Comes out every Wednesday. There's new episodes. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to learn more about it. Thanks to the audience for being here today. Great to have you here. And we will see you next time in our live stream. So take care, everyone, and have a great week.
All right. Talk soon. Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.